Howdy all you delicious people, I am here today to talk about Hellsing Ultimate, the very first episode. Really, I was to go on and just cover the very first episode because I want to just kind of see how this goes, and plus also I want a reintroduction to this character because I had seen certain episodes of Hellsing Ultimate prior. But yeah, so really I just kind of want to see Hellsing Ultimate again because that's how good it is. Really, I do realize there's two different camps with this. There is the Hellsing camp, and then there is also the Hellsing Ultimate camp, who certain people are to go on and say, it's like, I only like Hellsing. And there's some people that's like, well, Hellsing Ultimate is better. Really, when it comes down to it, I have no bias between either show, other than to say it's really, isn't it just the same thing twice anyways? But then also to say, like, there are differences between Hellsing and Hellsing Ultimate, to really just say that there is some backstory of Alucard in Hellsing Ultimate, and that's what really got me to say, like, okay, Hellsing Ultimate. But if it comes down to it, if it seems that Hellsing is to be the obvious choice that everybody just wants to watch Hellsing, then I go where the views go. That's really how easily swayed I am. I have no flag for either one of these things. But so, Hellsing Ultimate, we have a character named Alucard, who is to be one of the best vampire characters ever. Yes, I do realize there are other vampire characters in existence, like the Lost Boys, Kiefer Sutherland character. We have the Marvel Blade character. We have Morbius for certain people, and so on and so forth. The girl from Underworld, and yeah. Really, when you go on and you say any of those, Alucard is to be the vampire who, it seems from the very first episode, lays out to you that this character is unstoppable. Like, you cannot kill this character. But regardless of that, within other episodes, the character is going to evolve and build anyways, which that's what I appreciate about Alucard. If I can even say his name correctly. Alucard? We'll figure that out when we get there. But so, because I'm going to have a cast list of certain characters, and hopefully I'm going to be able to remember all of which that is to happen upon the very first episode. We'll figure that out when we get there also. But so, really, for this show, they make a really great idea, which is to say that Alucard is a special character. That he's not going to carry the show. That there's going to be certain other things in place that are going to be almost as equally important, if not really just good parts of the show that you're going to like as well as Alucard. And that ends up at first being like Integra. Integra is this strong woman character that is to even be in control of Alucard, because Alucard is just like, you know what, like, I really just like being the kind of underling of Integra, because really at the end of the day, I'm gonna get fed, like, I'm gonna be happy, and really Integra is also gonna give me a place to stay. So like, what else do I need? And so after we get kind of in the very beginning of this first episode some Integra story, we then have to push on and say, like, oh, okay, like, well, like, we get some Integra and Alucard, but now we have to go on and also give you the human side of the story to see like how the human race is battling against this threat, which is to be vampires and ghouls. And really, when we get to the police girl character, we really have to say that there is probably. I don't like that I'm saying this, but I feel I have to say this. There's a certain appeal about this character, but when it comes down to it, like, it also seems that this character has some pretty decent story to it as well. The police girl. Um, but yeah, so like there's a lot of really cool things going on within this show. And I also thought it was really interesting that not only do we get to talk about just, it's not just a vampire show, there's also like stuff like ghouls, where I was like, oh my god, like I would have gone on and seen shows like Tokyo Ghoul, which build up ghouls really well as the newer Fallout show does. But yeah, but if you want to see a really good ghoul show, watch the very first season of Tokyo Ghoul. You don't really need anything else after that because it kind of gets really off the rails, and everyone goes on and states that like nobody likes anything after the first season. But to me, I thought the very first season was really awesome. I really enjoyed it. But so, with that said, we eventually get to where even though Alucard is built as this unstoppable character, we still have to give him very challenging foes. Like, not just another vampire, but also we have to eventually bring in Anderson, which he, of course, will have a kind of almost Wolverine esque like thing about him. And eventually, I'm probably going on and kind of teeing up this episode heavily. So, with that said, if you really want to go in the dark about this show, I think it's about that time to go on and do so, because really this show is freaking great. It's effing great. It's almost epic. Really should go on and check out Hellsing Ultimate, because it is to, of course, be available on Hulu. If you want to check out Hellsing as well, you can also do it conveniently on Hulu. Or really, if you have no money to be able to spend on that thing called Hulu, I would also recommend a possible app that I'm not quite sure is available, but I've had it on my tablet for so long, I'm assuming it still is. There's an app called Anime Go Go, which is to have a number of anime stuff for absolutely free. And all you would have to go on and rationally do when you go through to search for any of these animes is really to, of course, find the one that says dub on it, because that'll be the English version, because there is the either the subbed or the dubbed versions, and so you can kind of pick and choose which one that you, of course, would rather uh, watch a thing in. But to get the English talking side of things, you, of course, or audio side of things, you would, of course, need to watch the dubbed version. But so, with that said, more than likely, I'm going to tee this episode up pretty dang heavily right now, and then we'll go into full on spoilers, and I'll break down the episode down a little bit more. So, firstly, we have the story with Integra's family, and we have Integra like, okay, like is she gonna be the person carrying the show? But then we have really Integra like turn to Alucard in the very beginning of this, and then it's like, oh, okay, so like I did really the very first time ever watching this, I'm like, okay, like where is this story gonna go? And it kind of goes a lot of other places. But then I just enjoyed it for really all that it gave me together, because it was a really good supernatural show. But so, like I kind of said, we go on to just be like, okay, like let's show the human side of things, fighting against these certain uh, ghoul vampire characters, and realizing that like these police characters are not like arsenaled with any kind of weapons to fight against these things. And I'm like, okay, why aren't they? If this seems to become a common occurrence, why aren't they weaponized? And plus, also, would it really matter if they were to be weaponized, but then didn't always need it? But still, they just had that extra advantage. But so we eventually have Alucard that comes in an action sequence, and he ends up taking the police girl and turning her. And then police girl ends up going on and getting like her kind of own kind of journey, which when we get into full on spoilers, like I will go on and go more in depth about with dream sequences and so on and so forth. But so we have Alucard who turns to police girl and is really giving her guidance and kind of telling her, it's like, well, hey, like you realize that you have so many skills now, and that you are strong and you are fast and you are actually really uh, good at shooting, much more so than you are. And really, for Alucard, like he really wants this police girl to uh, be a apprentice of. I think just because he has lived too long. Like he is to go on and see by the end. Like he's lived too long, and also like really like this is just an extra added thing on top of like what he's already doing, that now is to just kind of give him a much more difficulty while he's kind of blasting through all these other things that he can just easily take down and beat and defeat and whatever. Like this goes on to now make his life more challenging, and he loves that. And that's the thing that I liked about Alucard, was just like, hey man, I just need a challenge. I need something to do. And that's Alucard for you. So with that said, it seems that he will possibly get that foe, but you know, really when it comes down to it, like we're gonna have uh, a character not quickly get as defeated as he should be, because he'll be used in other episodes. So with that said, let's get on to just the full-on spoilers of this episode, the stuff that I kind of pulled back from actually saying, and more than likely I had said certain things twice. My bad. So with that said, I'm going to pause here in this video, and then I'm going to get the character list. I say character because really it shouldn't be the cast list, because I don't want to see who all voiced the show. Even though I'm sure they're really good, still, I really just need the characters to know who any of these people are in the show. So with that said, I'm going to pause here and I'll be right back. All right, spoiler time, spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this episode. Really, this episode has gone by quicker than I thought, but also, like, it was easy. Like, the episode was great. So really, like, what all could I have gone on and said further about this show besides like everything about it is really enjoyable. So In the very first part of this episode, we have a guy named Richard Hellsing, who is to be the brother of Integra's uh, father, and we come to find that Integra's father had left everything to Integra instead of Richard. So now Richard is ticked. He's going on a rampage through this home and wanting to go on to kill Integra when he is to find her. And so Integra is running around this house, scrambling to try and remember exactly what her father had said on his deathbed. And that, of course, was to have Integra go to a certain part of this castle, or the place that they live in, to find this one place that is to be her possible salvation. And so when Integra makes her way to this one spot that her father had told her, we come to find that there is just a corpse laying there. And Integra questions is like, man, my father must have been mad. Like, what the heck is he talking about? It's just a corpse in front of me. What the heck am I going to do with this? How exactly is this my salvation? And then she goes on to turn around to find Richard there right in front of her. And so Richard goes on and is holding a gun upon Integra, and we then come to find that Integra ends up getting shot, I think, in like the shoulder or someplace where, of course, she does not bleed to death, but she ends up getting shot regardless. And so Integra ends up falling, and some splashes of blood, or splashes of blood, as I like to say, end up falling upon the ground. We then come to find that the corpse is to seemingly come back to life via a tongue. A tongue is to start to move up and down to, of course, lap up the blood, giving this Alucard character strength and then immersing to face off against this now threat to wipe it out. Because, of course, that is to be what Alucard is to really just be meant to be, a character that just wrecks house. So after Alucard goes on to take out this threat, we then have this moment between Integra and Alucard just be like, okay, like, we're gonna be buddies for life. So we then go on and have to like get to like current day Integra and current day Alucard, which the guy never ages anyways, so it's just consistent day Alucard. But so we find that a town is to be overrun with a ghoul slash cedar priest problem, because we find that this cedar priest is to be a vampire. I hope it's not cheddar priest, because that would of course be the first thing that I would just say if I was to say it how it's pronounced. So really at some point I'm probably going to go on and butcher somebody's name somewhere. But so we come to find that this priest had become a vampire. It is now biting people, but just turning them into ghouls. And these ghouls are to be very much like zombies. But so we have these three policemen who are to make their way in to this this church, and one of them, of course, is the uh, police girl who is actually to be uh, Cesaris Victoria. But really, she's just called Police Girl by Alucard a lot. And plus, also, there's a certain appeal about her. But so, Police Girl, as well as these two other policemen, are to make their way into this church, and immediately the guys become wiped out. And the priest is looking at Victoria, and it's just like, well, hey, I'm going to play with my food before I eat it. Like, I am going to go on and have, like, the time of my life with this woman, and then I'll turn her. And so, really, that goes on and has the policeman, or whoever the captain, or whoever the most police guy in charge is, to go on and be needing to turn to Integra. And so Integra is to go on to bring her and Walter with her to assess the situation and just be like, well, like, neither one of us are getting our hands dirty. We're just going to send out Alucard because he is the best threat to go up against this situation, because he is to be a vampire going up against other ghouls slash vampires. And so, like, really, we only need Alucard anyways. But so, we have Alucard going in, and if the police were to have shot any of these ghouls or the vampire, it does nothing. But then when we would go on to, of course, have Alucard come in, and he is to, of course, be attacked and kind of disheveled into pieces, Alucard ends up getting right back up and is to shoot away at these ghouls and is to completely wipe them out. And we have the priest who's like, wait a minute, like, how is it that you can go on and kill any of these ghouls? Like, your gun should not work. And we come to find out in the master stroke of genius with this character that he was to have gone on and melted the silver cross that, of course, had been used in churches and whatever, I'm sure had been blessed at some point. So that immediately, like, gives us, like, yeah, like, this character is going to have the right tools to take out these certain monsters, where anybody else, it's like they weren't in the know, so that's why they got freaking slaughtered. And so Alucard goes on to wipe out all the ghouls quite easily, to where, of course, he is then to be left with just the priest and Victoria, Police Girl. So we come to find that the priest is using Police Girl as a human shield, and so really we have Alucard, who is just in his mind thinking of the Speed movie, where it's like, well, hey, like, your villain has a hostage, what do you do? And the cop would go on and say, well, shoot the hostage. Alucard looks at Police Girl and is just like, well, hey, man, like, I needed to get to this priest, so I'm getting to him through you. And so Alucard goes on and shoots the hostage through the chest and kills the priest. But then we would go on to have the police girl who has fallen to the ground, and she is kind of just clutching to life. And so Alucard is like, well, hey, like, you probably would have died either way from either my hands or his, but at least mine, you went a lot quicker. But hey, like, I'm going to give you a choice. Like, do you want to become a vampire, or do you want to just die? And so we go on to have like the police girl who doesn't say a thing, but she's like looking at the moon, she's like touching it, and then she's touching things, and she's doing all kinds of stuff. To where I guess we just have to naturally assume between the eyeballs of these characters that that just means that like, hey, like, save me, dude, do whatever you gotta do. So Alucard goes on to bite police girl and turn her, and so we then go on to have the police girl who is having this dream, and she used to be in this kind of padded room, and all these ghouls are running around, and she's being chased after them, and all of a sudden Alucard appears, and it's like, well, hey, like, what's going on? The girl, of course, ends up waking up, and it is to, of course, force her to realize that, like, okay, like, hey, you were dreaming, but then also you legitimately are a vampire because your wound, of which that is to be on your chest, is to have completely healed. So having Alucard kind of help her understand what, of course, is going on, because girl's brand new to this, she's oblivious. So we have Integra rolling in with Walter, and we go on to, of course, have Integra say, it's like, well, hey, like, since you're in my stead, and also since you are now a vampire, well, you're working with me. And so we come to, of course, have Victoria, who ends up getting the new set of clothes and is to be kind of set out on this mission right away. It seems that for some odd reason, because of course we have Alucard in the show, yeah, all the vampire threats have kind of just been up in their game lately and really have kind of gotten out of their nest and are now to just be like out in the woodwork, just running rampant. We don't know why. Like, all of this is happening. And so really it's just because show and because story. I think it's hilarious how they really have to go on and consistently go back to that. It's like, why is it all the vampires are like, they're doing their thing right now? Like, why is it that they're just like in our faces just all the time? It's because show reasons. Duh. But so we come to find Integra, who is to see that it seems that one of the vampires had gone on to deface this one wall and has kind of spat in the face of the religious community, but then also Alucard and Integra themselves. So it's like, okay, well, we got to definitely go after these foes. So we would, of course, have Integra, who's like, okay, Alucard, make it snappy. Alucard makes his way to this home where there is to be two people, it seems, one with a gun and one who runs. And so we have Police Girl who is on the rooftop, and she's going to, I guess, be the sharpshooter without knowing her full vampire abilities, as well as also probably not having a gun that, in my eyes, could be built to be a sharp shooting gun. But I guess that's just me. I don't know much about guns. But so we have Alucard just making his way into this home, and is to, of course, see this one kind of beanied hat kind of vampire. And so we go on to have this vampire who is to kind of blast away at Alucard. And Alucard is like, really? Like, man, like, you can't even transform into a bat. You can't do any of this kind of cool stuff that I can easily do. And so, really, like, you have completely disgraced being a vampire. And then he goes after him, and he is to take his hand and just kind of like through his chest. I'm like, okay, so I guess that's for vampires, you have to go on and you have to really just jab through the chest, I guess, to destroy the heart. And that could kill a lot of vampires, I'm assuming, or assessing. Beyond you just going on. And like there's so many different ways that supposedly has been written in a number of different movies and shows to kill a vampire. Some you would have to go on and like, hey, you can like stab into its heart and cut off its head, and that's the way to do it. Or there's certain like twilighting things where you have to like separate the limbs and then stab into everywhere and cut off everything. And I'm like, okay, that just seems bizarre. Uh and so on and so forth. Like silver can kill vampires and like all like there's a whole bunch of setups of a number of things, a number of different scenarios. Mention your favorite one in the comments below. But anyways, uh we then have to realize that the other vampire had started to run away from the building, realizing that she, of course, is to be outmatched. So we're having Alucard, who's just like, okay, this can be a teaching moment for a police girl. So Alucard goes on to tell Victoria, it's like, well, hey, like, you have to go on and without a scope or without anything that you should probably actually use to be able to shoot so far with this gun. It's like you're just going to go on and you're just going to use your vampire third eye and you're going to be able to so accurately hit this vampire in the heart and kill it. And so Victoria's like, well, okay, I guess. And then she aims up the shot and her eyes goes red and she does it. She hits it. Now the card is like, all right, like, well, that's one thing down that I can that I could have taught you or taught you, but there's going to be several others because really Alucard is going to be having to like tell this girl, it's like, hey, like use your vampire abilities, like you can be really strong or you can be really fast, and we'll get there. So now that that's done and over with, again with the like, why is there such a growing vampire threat? I don't know why. Next up, we then have to go on and have a Vatican priest make their way to a character called Alexander Anderson, who is to be the Irish priest of sorts. And so we have this character who is meeting this more elderly priest, and we have him kind of do the like, well, hey, here is your mission if you choose to accept it kind of ordeal, where uh, we go on to have Anderson hear from this priest that there is to start to get some Ireland activity going on as far as vampires is concerned, and there to have uh, a vampire kind of cross the bridge, so to speak, to Ireland to let me pause here for a second. All right, so let me set that up a little bit better, because we of course realize or have to realize that Alucard is his own agency. He's like the FBI, and we have Anderson, who of course is like the CIA. And so we have Alucard, who's like the FBI, who's kind of coming in on uh, Anderson's kind of turf. And it's like, well, like, if anything, like, if Alucard or whoever is to die, it's like, well, like, nobody's going to be crying for them because there is nobody. So if Anderson has to go on and kill Alucard and whoever, like, he's completely fine with it. And so that's what kind of happens in the later half of this episode, is to go on and have first Alucard and Victoria kind of thin out the herd of all these ghouls, and have Alucard go to tell Victoria, it's like, oh, hey, well, like, you should be using your strength and your speed, and, like, you should be trying to kill these ghouls as quickly as possible, because that's our strategy. And so Victoria goes through and starts, like, crushing skulls and kind of fast paced shooting through all these ghouls. And Alucard's like, all right, like, you're finally getting it. And so we then have Victoria turn around and get stabbed multiple times with these blessed blades, and she falls over. And Alucard's like, huh, well, all right, like, she got stabbed, she's not dead yet, but, like, all right, like, who did this? And then all of a sudden we have a number of barrier spells through all these papers that are landing upon this wall. It's like, aha, like, all right, like, that tells me, like, somebody from the Vatican has come here, but who exactly? And so Anderson appears to face off against Alucard, and we also end up having, on kind of the sidelines, we have Integra, who ends up getting word that there is to be Anderson kind of poaching on Alucard, and she's like, oh my god, like, we have to get here as quickly as humanly possible. And so Integra is to tell, of course, Walter, because heaven forbid he dies in the early parts of the show, because he's an important character. Integra leaves with these two other kind of suit goons, and is like, okay, we got to get here as quickly as possible. Hopefully, we can stop like King Kong from fighting Godzilla, basically here. And so when we, of course, have both Alucard and both Anderson fighting it out, we go on to have Anderson, who is doing a pretty good job at making it look like Alucard is going to get defeated here by stabbing into him multiple times, but then also chopping off his head. And, like, Police Girl is, like, holding on to Alucard's head, and it's like, okay, like, obviously, like, our character is killed off here. His time's done. And then Integra ends up going on to talk to Anderson and just being like, oh, you chopped off his head, did you? You stabbed him in the heart, did you? Well, like, that may work for the common vampire, but that doesn't work for the king of vampires. And so we then have Alucard, who's like, oh, I've been playing this whole time, I've been playing you. And Alucard goes on and laughs, and then goes to not kill Anderson, but, like, give him a good old kind of scare for him to go on and justify leaving, to really have him come back in other episodes to have the battle of the two giants come back again. But so, really, that's just kind of how this episode is to all play out. Maybe there might be a thing somewhere or another where I probably had forgotten maybe a good scene or whatever, but that's all I can really remember. And also, like, I'm kind of really, really tired at this point, and probably should still go on and cover one more thing But I don't know. I'm getting kind of really tired, in all honesty. Plus, it's been a while since doing 2 videos, regardless of length of what they were. But yeah, with that said, I'm gonna get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody. One more thing left. By the end of the big battle, we have, of course, Alucard and we have Anderson. And we have them duking it out. Of course, the big thing is that Alucard is to lose his head. And then we would have Anderson almost coming in to finish off Police Girl. Then of course Integra shows up, and her side goons end up getting wiped out fairly easily. But then there's kind of a struggle between both Integra and Anderson, and that's of course when Anderson is like, okay, well, I need an update about what all is going on here. And so Anderson is to go on and tell her, it's like, oh yeah, I chopped the head off of Alucard. And then that's when, of course, uh, we we would have Integra who's like, well, you chopped off his head, that's nothing. And so that's of course when Alucard is to come back, and both Anderson and Alucard are to fight even more, which really just forces Anderson into realizing like he cannot really beat this foe, and so he goes on to use his spells to really just mask his escape or disappearance. And then we end up having, of course, kind of Alucard just kind of walking off to just like, okay, well, another job done. So hopefully, I was to go on and say that correctly, and also I am to hopefully just kind of get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.